Presenting Did Rowe Know? This is the frontispiece of the 1709 edition of the Collected Works of William Shakespeare, edited by Nicholas Rowe. The engraving is done by Michael van der Gucht. On the surface it's unremarkable, but somebody went to a great deal of trouble to base this on an engraving for the works of Pierre Corneille by Guillaume Vaillet, published circa 1698 to 1709. Let's first compare the two. Corneille is represented by a 3D bust, but Shakespeare is curiously flat, like a painting. Let's take a closer look. Note the flattened appearance of the Shakespeare image. Corneille's image is obviously meant to be in the style of a Roman bust. Shakespeare seems to cover up the bust of Corneille. Corneille is also considered to be the Shakespeare of French drama. He did in the latter part of the 17th century what Shakespeare did for English drama in the latter part of the 16th century. The frame on the Shakespeare is less like one for a portrait in oil and more like one for a cheap print. There are a few more differences. From the top to the bottom, the first is the shield behind the angel has no lettering in the van der Gucht, which I will abbreviate VDG. The banners have no lettering in the VDG. The fold in the angel's gown is now behind the wreath in the VDG. The left-hand muse is looking upwards in an odd way. VDG has altered the angles of the right-hand muse's left arm and the rebec, which is the wind instrument at the base, to point to specific things in the inscription. VDG has added lines to the base of the pedestal. The closest mask to the muse on the right-hand side has been subtly changed. The pile of books on the floor has been changed as well. Let's see what these might mean, starting from the bottom of the engraving. We begin with the books. Notice the Vaillet books. They are a bit closer to the figure than the VDG books. Notice the triangle formed by the central and the right-hand book in the Vaillet engraving. It fits inside of the triangle formed by the VDG books. Taking into account the perspective, it looks to me like VDG wanted to form a right-angle triangle out of the books, possibly implicate or suggest that Freemasons had a hand in the production of the book. Notice that the Vaillet angle has been changed. That changes the angle of an imaginary triangle formed by the middle book's top edge. If my measurements are correct, this is a 40-degree angle, and it encloses the fallen scholar on the left of the engraving. Next, we look at the masks lying at the foot of the right-hand muse. There is a tiny detail which is easy to overlook. Watch. The Vaillet mask is on top of the VDG mask. Did you see the transition? The lines from the pedestal have disappeared from behind the mask's right eye. Van der Gucht has shut it. The implication is there is something hidden or secret in the engraving that we have to discover. Next, we look at the pedestal bases. There are some tiny differences. Pay attention to the upper registers in both details. And thanks to John Anthony and nobody Oxfordian for pointing these out and first discovering them. What is different in the VDG? There are 8 letter V's here on the left-hand side of the rebec. Yet there are no V's on the right-hand side. So why did VDG do this? John Anthony and nobody Oxfordian and I believe it's because 8 times 5 equals 40. It's another one of those numbers we encounter all the time in the authorship game. Next, we look at the rebecs. These are the strange wind instruments at the base of the pedestal. VDG has changed the angle of the rebec. As you can see here, it is sharper. Next, we look at the inscriptions. And thanks to John Anthony again for showing me this. Notice the rebec's mouthpiece points to the number 5 at the bottom of the inscription. And 2 things point to the letter M. The first is the stem of the palm frond that the right-hand muse is holding. And there is the shadow of the palm frond. The shadow value of M is 12 in gematria. And 12 plus 5 is 17. He also pointed out that the Hebrew or Greek gematria value of M is 40. And the Latin gematria value of R is 17. This gives us another 1740 illusion. John added the 2 16s together to get 32. He then split the 5 from the 3, then added the 2 digits up to get 8. The sums equal 40 once again. 32 plus 8. Now on to what I found. Notice the italic letters in the inscription separate the name Shakespeare into 2 proper words. The final E is missing from spear. There are also 17 letters in Roman typeface in the top part of the inscription. And there are 17 characters in the bottom of the inscription. You can draw a line from the triangular fold in the angel's gown to the base of the engraving. It passes to the left of the lowercase r in Mr. and ends near the center of the angle formed by the 2 books. Here are some peculiar sums. We use this triangle fold line to divide the engraving into 2 parts, a left part and a right part. The gematria sum of these letters, the smaller letters in William, on the left part of the line, is equal to the gematria value of the uppercase W. 40 minus 40 equals 0, and 40 plus 40, of course, equals 80. We have seen these numbers before. The gematria sum of the italic uppercase letters, again on the left-hand side of the line, 2 italic S's in Shakespeare, is 36. The gematria sum of these letters, in between the italic letters, is 24. 36 subtract 24 is 12. Remember, we always subtract smaller numbers from larger numbers. We subtract the gematria value of the uppercase M at the top to get 0 once again. almost as if the author is being erased. We add the gematria values of all the Roman uppercase letters to the left of the line to get 116. Then subtract the sum of the italic gematria letters in Shakespeare. Again, it's to the left of the line to get 80 once again. We subtract the value of the italic letters again on the left-hand side of the dividing line to get 69. We'll put that number aside for the moment. Now, if we add the values, the italic uppercase letters to the left of the line, to these italic letters in the top part, and then we add that to the sum of these digits, get 69 again. We subtract the values of the largest letters in the inscription from 69 to get 17. On the right-hand side of the line, the sum of the Roman uppercase letters values is 51, which is 17 times 3. Now we add these numbers, 1616 plus 53, to get 1,669. Here we're going to use numbers from both sides of the line. We subtract the gematria values to the left of the line, the italic letters, to get 1,658. These are the A and D and A and E from the obituary at the bottom half of the inscription. And then we subtract the values of the uppercase S's to get 1,622. But we still have some letters we haven't used. Finally, we subtract the number of the italic lowercase letters from that sum to get 1,619. It's another digit sum number. 1 plus 6 is 7, plus 1 is 8, plus 9 is 17. We have seen these numbers before. We have 3 sequential multiples of 17. 17 times 1, 17 times 2, 17 times 3. We have 2 sequential multiples of 20. 20 times 2 and 20 times 4. We have a large digit sum number of 1,619. They are numerical clues to the true identity of the author. Next, we look at the left-hand muse. Pay attention to their eyes and look at them for just a moment. Don't overthink, don't overstare at them, just look at them. This muse from the Vallier looks up at a 45-degree angle toward the wreath she is laying on the head of Corneille. This muse from the VDG, on the other hand, looks up at an approximately 63-degree angle. She is looking directly at the blank shield behind the angel. She is giving out 2 messages. If I must lay the wreath on this head, I must. And this is what Shakespeare really wrote. This is exactly the message given out in the Stratford Monument in Holy Trinity Church, as explained by Alexander Waugh. Take a look at the banners. The Corneille banners are on the left-hand side, and of course the VDG are on the right-hand side. It's as if Corneille wrote tragedies and comedies because those words are written on the banners. But Shakespeare wrote nothing. To top off the hidden message, we have the shields. This repeats the message of the banners. Unlike Corneille, there is no Théâtre de Shakespeare. The engraver could have written the Theatre of Shakespeare in that shield behind the angel, just as Vaillet had done in the Corneille engraving, but he didn't. More precisely, the man whose obituary we see on the pedestal did not write a thing. The man who died in 1616 did not write the works, which are within the covers of the 1709 Rowe collection. But the man who was trampled underfoot by the left-hand Muse did. And he is identified in part by the number 40. Those are the most obvious clues that someone knew the secret behind the name, that William Shakespeare did not write the plays. To sum up, the real author is hinted at by the following clues. They tell us all we need to know. In other words, we don't have to know about the Vaillet engraving to understand the message here. I just compared the two to let people realize exactly what is going on. First, the portrait is obviously and curiously flat like a cheap print, out of keeping with the great words inside the covers of the book. VDG has told us 3 times the person named in the pedestal did not write a thing. First, there is no Théâtre de Shakespeare, or Theatre of Shakespeare, in the shield behind the angel. Second, the words tragedy and comedy are not on the banners that the angel is holding. Third, the left-hand Muse is staring directly up at the blank shield behind the angel. This satisfies the tria sunt omnia principle and is a clue that we are on the right track. The mask tells us there is something hidden in the engraving because the right eye of the mask is shut and we cannot see beyond it to the pedestal behind. He gives us number puzzles and clues alluding to the playwright's true identity. Finally, the 40-degree angle from the top of the middle book encloses the fallen scholar as if he is to be identified with that number. The evidence clearly shows VDG knew the secret. But did Rowe know? To find out, watch for a future video on this edition of the plays, in which I will try and figure out whether or not Nicholas Rowe knew the secret or didn't. Thanks for watching. Stay safe.